Okay, I love the fact that my theme song is like mad cute, but this is gonna be long as shit. I am so very sorry. I'm sorry. I'm gonna tell you right off the front, right off the jump. I'm stoned. That's number one. Number two, this is gonna be really, really long. I mean, it's not gonna be as long as my trees, but it's thick. It's thick with QUE. All right, so let's do it. So, as you can see, I'm kind of already lit. Today's poison is the Nonino Spritz. I was about to say Spritz Nonino. I don't know why that needed to be said backwards. It's the Nonino Spritz. It's basically the same Amaro Nonnino that we had last week that we did the Grimoni with, which was like the version. It was like a spin on the Negroni. That was for last week's episode. And for this week's episode, we're going to do something along the lines of an Amaro Spritz. Very light. It's still early in the day while I'm recording. I wanted to get this over with because I knew it was going to be long. So I wanted to make sure I had enough time to listen to it and do whatever I need to do to it. Anyway, I'm sorry. I just went on a tangent. So the Nonino Spritz is sparkling wine or prosecco. One part of that, 2 parts of Amaro Nonnino, and and like a splash of lemon juice. I like citrus, so I kind of overdo the lemon juice sometimes. But you pour those ingredients into a white wine glass, like an Aperol Spritz, and then you put some ice in that bitch, and you stir and you drink it. It's as simple as that. Now, this is episode 14, part 2 of Swear to Drunk I'm Not God. And I said the last time that this was going to be a 2-parter, and I was right. And what I didn't want to do was make it a H.H. Holmes situation where I did a 3-parter, because I'm not going to probably ever do that again. Who knows, though? So last week we talked about the family annihilator, Chris Watts, and we focused on who he was, who he is, who his wife was, and how they got to this point, which I think is a very important. Here's the thing. Can I say this real quick? I mean, I'm gonna use like 2 minutes. What I try to do with this podcast is not necessarily just focus on the grotesqueries. I know originally it was like, oh, get drunk and listen to some fucked up shit. Yeah, sure. But more importantly, I have always been interested in mental illness and psychology. My science project, actually, when I was in elementary school, was literally just the question, what is mental illness? And because I'm fascinated by that as a topic as well, how people behave, I kind of just get stuck in it, because I understand that we're all like random sacks of meat on a rock in space, just floating around and shit. Like, I get that part. So I know that things they just happen, it just happens. Shit just happens. People are just the way they are. But there is a certain pattern and pathology to what makes us what we are, what makes us do the things that we do. And that is the tangle web that is psychology. And so, when I do these episodes, I like to focus a lot on how they got to that point over the crimes themselves, because that's the thing that we all know already. For the most part, depending on, whether or not it's a super big like serial killer or somebody who disappeared and it was like national news. I feel like we know what that part is, but how it got to that. That's what I always ask myself when I'm watching documentaries. Why did they do that? Like, what the fuck is that about? I told you before, that was one of the reasons, one of the traits that my ex-boyfriend hated about me was I always wanted to know why. And I think that, researching Chris Watts, because I knew about him already, it was like, okay, so how did we get to this point? So that is what part 1 was about. Part 2 is we're going to complete it. We're going to go through, we're going to learn more about his new whirlwind romance with his coworker Nikki, and then we're gonna go into what it ultimately ends up happening to everybody. Okay, all right, take a sip. I'm sorry. Like I keep using like metal straws and they clang up against the glass. So that's what you're hearing. I figure it's better than, slurping and gulping, which I've done for the past fucking 13 episodes. So it is what it is. Okay. You got your sip? Cool. And obviously, if you don't have what I have, who gives a fuck? How would I know? Doesn't matter. Now, okay. So like I said, we made it to a point. Chris has started emailing his coworker, Nikki Kessinger. And he's starting to have, all of these very intimate conversations with her. He's starting to really dig his nails into Kessinger a little bit more, and vice versa. I mean, they're really having a good time. Now, because they start getting really intimate, the lust was incredibly strong. Like I've been in a situation like that where the lust was so intense that you were just like, I don't even know how, but I'm pretty sure I'm in love with this person. It's like, I don't know what the fuck any of this means, but I'm going for it. You know what I mean? So I do understand that as a concept, especially when you feel like you have made a very deep connection with the person. And so I do understand how that happens and how it can happen quickly, and how it can also get to a point where you're just like, oh my God, this is like, I'm out of control. Like I'm out of control. I don't even know. Right. So, but the thing is like with that lust, you start to really crave each other. And with Nikki and Chris, they started to really crave each other physically. I mean, he is an unhappily married man with 2 children living this very sanitized life, even though him and his wife have been together for 8 years. They are at a point where they just probably can't stand each other for real. And Shanann, she would express love for him. But, if you go back to episode 1, when we talked about how Shanann had these controlling aspects to her nature where, it was hard to kind of tell if she loved him for real. And as a woman who, I pride myself in the fact that I have my shit together. And I feel like Shanann is also that type of personality type. She has her shit together. I think what you do is, as a defense mechanism sometimes, is you can actually make yourself seem like you care less about things in order to protect your heart. But so even though you may know that it's kind of bullshit that you're doing that, people who are perceiving you and who are receiving that message aren't necessarily able to differentiate whether or not you're doing something on purpose or not. What you find yourself doing is accidentally building this wall and then not completely knowing how to put it down and keep it down with certain people. And I think that Shanann's issue here is not that she didn't love Chris. I think she did love Chris. I think she was controlling. I think she more so developed into loving Chris. I don't think she loved him immediately. And I think that there is a part of her, and I think all these things can exist in the same space, but there was also a part of her that knew that Chris, the very handsome, doting husband, was perfect for the image. So I think with Chris knowing that, I think he's a little more intuitive than he comes off. I think with Chris knowing that his relationship is kind of bullshit with Shanann, kind of put him in a weaker position to fall for a situation like the one he fell for with Nikki. I'd like to say I completely blame Chris, but I kind of don't. I think, not of course saying that Shanann deserved to be murdered, because again, I think to jump to murdering people is the most ridiculous shit in the world. But I do understand how one would be like, okay, you know what? This girl is just different. She's just different. And let's be honest, they got married very young. I think that's another issue that I have with this situation too, is that 8 years of marriage, you only in your early 30s, you've been married for too long. Just be honest. You don't even know who the fuck you are for real, like until you're like 37, 38, damn near 40. You're like, okay, now I know who I am. And even when you feel like you know who you are, you don't completely accept who you are. And there's a certain amount of acceptance that comes with getting older when you start to realize that the things that you do is not really changing all that much. You're like, damn, this must be actually who the fuck I am. So by July, you know, Chris was starting to get sloppy. So he's in this romance. He's starting to get sloppy. He would literally wake up in Nikki's bed having Miss Shanann's 12 phone calls. I mean, the dates started to really become a part of a like plan. Like it was like, okay, let's go to the movies. Let's go to races. Let's go to sports games. Let's go to dinner. Let's have drinks. I mean, they were really, really dating. And over the next 5 or 6 weeks, Chris spent the night with Nikki every night. Having sex, watching movies. I mean, there had been a switch in their relationship, and Nikki noticed it. I mean, it's a situationship early, and then it starts to slip into like, okay, we go together. Like a certain level of expectation is now there. So she said, what's up with the divorce? Like, when's that happening? And Shanann, you know, at the same time is like FaceTiming Chris because she's like, are you even interested in seeing the kids? You know, she's like, what's going on? Are you going to pay attention to the children? You know what I mean? Like, these are valid concerns to me, you know, from Shanann. I think that when you have a husband and he has children and you have left for 5 weeks and he has no interest in FaceTiming your kids, that's kind of weird. Side note, though, I would like to also add that Chris's wedding ring stopped fitting because of his weight loss, and he just stopped wearing it. So just in case you needed that. A little tidbit. That's an important thing to mention because it's like, nigga, if you were happy, you would have got that shit resized. You know what I mean? So in July, Shanann went to visit the Wattses for a weekend. I mean, she gave Cindy a list of things that, you know, the kids couldn't eat because Celeste was allergic to tree nuts. And when Shanann arrived at the house, she didn't like the food. So she spent $375 on food for the kids to eat. That very night, Chris went out to see Jurassic Park with Nikki. Shanann called all night. She was leaving messages, but he didn't even notice. So finally he responded, quote, "I'm sorry, boo. I fell asleep as soon as I got home. That heat killed me yesterday. I love you so much. Exclamation marks times 3. End quote. See, I've expressed this before, and I'm going to just say it again, just for the sake of saying it. There's a sickness when you're this comfortable with this shit. Because this, I'm sorry, boo. Why are you doing all of that? That's not necessary. If the relationship's ending, the relationship's ending. Now, the thing is with Chris, is I think he wasn't even quite sure of what he was doing. It's kind of early with Nikki. They're still in the dating phases. So what he's doing, he's still pacifying the situation, trying to like keep it on the level just in case Nikki ends up on some other shit. So while I disagree with it in this particular narrative, I do understand why he's doing it. I just hate that people do it and they do it for way too long. They do it for much longer than they should. And we'll see here, Chris kind of does it for too long, but 5 weeks isn't a long time to pretend like you love your wife. Now that I think about it, it's like, it's usually a part of the process is that, hey, you know, there's love. So things went south when Shanann caught, this is back visiting the Watts. Things would start to go south when Shanann caught Celeste almost eating ice cream that contained nuts under the supervision of Chris's parents. And so Shanann got her kids. She got the hell the fuck out of there. She then proceeded to hop on Facebook and blast her in-laws. She called Chris and he said he'd taken care of it. Like, he's like, yo, like, I mean, it is what it is. This situation would affectionately be called Nutgate, because, like Watergate, Shanann could not let it go. At the same time, Chris is sending nudes to Nikki. Shanann was starting to get suspicious. Now, this is in late July. Now, when she calls him and he's either sleeping or working out and constantly missing his calls, she's kind of like, he really didn't do that before. There's something going on. And he and Nikki were tiptoeing through tulips, going camping and shit. They went to go take pictures at the sand dunes and all this other shit in Arizona. And Shanann's spidey senses are firing off. I mean, she knows something is wrong. She said, quote, "I kept looking at my phone all night and no response from you. Like, seriously, we didn't just start dating yesterday. We've been together for 8 years and have 2.5 kids together." Chris continues to lie, though, pretending to be all lovey-dovey with Shanann while also lying to Nikki. Quote, "They began the long drive back in the late morning, stopping off at BJ's Brew House in Colorado Springs for lunch. Watts left his wife a voicemail. Quote, finished the hike, packing up and heading home. Then he ignored a string of calls from Shanann, who finally texted him that afternoon. I'm assuming you're safe, considering it's been 3.5 hours. He replies, there was a car fire and the Renaissance Festival traffic in Colorado Springs. Just got out of our car, headed home. It was another 2 hours before he finally answered her calls. After hanging up, Shanann sent him a sarcastic text. Sorry you're tired, but I haven't talked to you in 48 hours and I had a hard weekend if you care. By the way, don't be confused by him actually acknowledging that there's multiple people that he's on the trip with someone else, because he was actually pretending like he was on the trip. Like, I think it was like a work event or co-worker or some shit like that. So yeah, his text of like, we're on our way is not because she knows. It's because I just want to clear that up. So 10 minutes later, he responded, I'm sorry you had a hard weekend, boo. I will make it up to you, I promise. I'm sorry I'm out of it tonight. It would have been nice for my husband to show interest in his girls and how his girls and I are and the baby, she told him. I'm done with begging for you to talk. See you Tuesday. That Monday was Chris's last night with Nikki before going to North Carolina. He texted his wife, Shanann, letting Dieter out and going to bed, boo. I love you. Dieter is their dog. So that's who he's letting out. He got to Kessinger's house with flowers, a love letter, and a card. Nikki, wow, where do I even start? The first day I saw you, you took my breath away. The first day I had the guts to talk to you, I got lost in those stunning green eyes. The first day we went out to the park together, I knew I was addicted. The first time we kissed, I knew I had met the most amazing, unique, and electric woman ever. We have had a lot of firsts together, Nikki, and I want to keep having them with you. Love, Chris. Very precious, but pretty fucked up. 5 hours later, he lands in North Carolina. He's super standoffish. He's going there to visit his family. They were not happy with each other. That morning, Shanann was vomiting violently and Chris didn't even give a fuck. Now, Shanann was so down that she wasn't really posting on social media, which is rare for her because she is, as we know, very obsessed with social media. They would rent a condo in Myrtle Beach for 5 days. That night, Chris stayed on the phone with Nikki for an hour. In the meantime, Shanann is complaining to all of her friends, telling them that Chris is not himself. He said nothing. This is her quote. He said nothing wrong, she replied. 5 weeks for me and not touching me doesn't make me feel good. He got me pregnant. I just want to cry. They were sleeping together, but he wasn't affectionate towards her. And she was self-conscious because she gained a bunch of weight during her pregnancy. So she texted her friends. Kids in bed. A frustrated Shanann texts Christina. I took a night shower. Means I want sex and he knows it. That's in parentheses. He's over here doing a push-up challenge instead of discussing anything or fucking me. I'm over here crying in silence. He was still refusing to have sex with her at this point. So Chris was also communicating with Nikki still and even went out to find her a present. That night while Shanann was talking to her friends, he spent over an hour talking to Nikki. And when Shanann confronted him, he told her he was upset because she banned his parents from coming to Myrtle Beach. Remember, Nutgate. You know, she's still mad about Nutgate. Nicole Atkinson was texting Shanann. She didn't know what was going on. So Nicole told the police later, she was like, she hadn't seen him in 5 weeks and he wasn't even sleeping in the same bed as her, which I found really odd. Nicole asked if he had been affectionate before, Nicole asked if he had been affectionate before she left for North Carolina, and Shanann said everything had been fine. She said they were screwing like rabbits, said Nicole, and he couldn't get enough of her. And they were doing it in the pantry while the girls were in the other room. So to go from that extreme to I don't want to touch you is odd. Now, here's the thing. Remember I was talking about lying? People lie sometimes too to make their situation seem better than what it is. And even though the difference is trust. So Nicole trusts Shanann, and Nicole trusts that Shanann will tell her everything that's going on and be honest about it, because she's told her certain things that weren't so glitzy and glamoury, but she was honest about that. The whole screwing like rabbits thing is like, okay, that's possible, but that's also possibly not true. I mean, and that's from, that could possibly be Shanann fluffing up her situation to her friends. That women do that. People do that. It's not, everybody does that. Just reading this again, I'm kind of like, that could have also not been true. But the thing is that the consistency that, and we can assume honesty, honesty-based relationships that Shanann has with her friends is a lot of reason why Chris couldn't get away with what he ultimately ended up doing. Because not only did Nicole feel like she knew her very well, because she's one of her close friends, so did everybody on social media. So when things started to kind of shift, people notice a shift, because when people put themselves out there like that, and if it's, I'm not going to say an authentic way, but if they consistently put themselves out there, like if you consistently look at my Instagram, you'll see I got some shit up there about space. I know I like the moon. I love Chicago. I love alcohol. I got a podcast. There's certain things about me that you are used to seeing. I post stories every 37 seconds. If I dipped off and stopped, posting stories for 2 months, people be like, damn, this bitch ain't posting. Maybe, I don't know. The people that care about me would. So I think that her consistent behavior, her constant just like patterns helped her friends realize that there was something off. So when you're having these discussions with the cops and the cops are like, wait a minute, did she tell you that she was having sex with him? And she was like, yeah, they were fucking like rabbits. That could be true. That could be true, but that could also be a lie too. Because sometimes when you're in a shitty relationship, you don't always want your homegirls to know everything. You give them enough because you can't help emotionally but to show that something's wrong with you. So you give them enough, but you don't want to make it seem like it's fucked up forever either. An 8-year marriage, doubt it. I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just saying that's always a possibility. So Chris finally grows enough balls to invite his family to Myrtle Beach, whether Shanann wanted them to come or not. I mean, Shanann was pissed. In an act of defiance, Chris called his parents and he told them he wanted to separate. He said, she will not let me see you guys. She won't allow it. She doesn't want you to have anything to do with Bella and Celeste. And then he proceeded to tell Nikki and spent 2 hours on the phone with her. Now, the thing about the telling the parents thing to me, I think that would be a great, in your head, if you want to leave your family, I think that would be, even though he's been on, again, this is another one of them situations where both could be true. We just talking this shit out. He could ultimately be 100% using the fact that Shanann won't let them see his kids as an excuse to separate because he wants to be with Nikki. This is one of those situations where that could be true, that he's actually pissed about that. And he's finally fed up after years of letting Shanann have control over his relationship with his parents. And now to include the kids in on that and not let his parents see their own grandchildren would also make a person that furious. The only reason why I'm catching it and I'm saying, it could have been something else is because he's a clear psychopath. So, I mean, ultimately, we do know he doesn't care about Bella and Celeste, you know? So, So anyway, he's calling Nikki. He spends all his time on the phone with her. And that evening, he had an argument with Shanann. She texted him and she was like, truth came out last night. I didn't create a dagger between you and your dad. That was done by your mom and your dad. And I won't change a thing. My daughter's life is way more important. She told him that his parents' home was no longer a safe zone for Bella and Celeste. You can let them tell you what you want. You can believe I created this dagger, but I didn't. These kids are my world, and I have to protect them from the evil of the world, which I think is a little dramatic, but okay. I shouldn't have to protect them from an evil family. Then she confronted Chris about his recent behavior toward her and the children. Something changed when I left. You may be happier alone, and that's fine. You can be alone. She then chastised him for failing to acknowledge her pregnancy or her feelings. So after that blow up, they were only talking via text. To make matters worse, Shanann went on a campaign to discredit her in-laws, saying that they were trying to ruin everything from the beginning. She told them that she basically said to Chris that maybe he should move back with his parents since he wants to be around them, because of course they do not appreciate him the way that she does. So Shanann also demanded they apologize for not attending Celeste's birthday. Quote, no one ever protected you from your mom, and someone should have before me. I'm done with being the bad guy in all this, especially when I had more balls to stand up for you a long time ago with them. When there was no reply by lunchtime, Shanann sent another text. While it's on my mind, you are not standing up for us and the girls are not cool. Wait, you are not standing up for us and the girls are not cool. That's a typo on her part. You just make it so they feel they did no wrong and brush it under the rug. 3 minutes later, she followed up again. I'm not asking you to choose who to be with. I shouldn't have to ask you to choose right from wrong. If you are not happy, then you know where to go. Worst summer ever. Now, here's my thing. You're right. She's right. I also feel like, little Grace, I get it. Your kid, almost went into anaphylactic shock because of some nuts that was in the house. And not even that she went into anaphylactic shock, but she found these nuts and this ice cream with the nuts in it, and just assume that it was fucking World War Z. And I think it's important. It's like the parents are older. They ain't used to all these kids with all these goddamn allergies and shit. You know what I mean? I think the parents deserved a little bit of grace. Obviously, I don't know these people's lives, but if this was the only occurrence, I think a nice opportunity, nice sit down to say, just to let you know, if they have nuts, here's where, if you go to the grocery store, here's where the label says that this contains nuts. I need you to really pay attention to this because they will end up in the hospital. You know what I mean? Like, so instead, I feel like Shanann could have possibly been using the kids to trigger Chris. And obviously, and I can't say this enough, and this is the last time I'm gonna say this. I'm not saying that they deserved anything I'm not saying she deserved anything that happened to her. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that at the same time, Shanann is difficult. And we know that she's slightly controlling. That's just fact. And if she, is not getting attention from him and she thinks that if she wants to hurt him, the best way to do that is to take him from his family and then to basically say to him, by the way, fuck that. The kids can't go over there either. And I think I do believe, and this is my personal opinion, that she could have possibly used the kids, as a way to hurt Chris. And women do that. So whether she did that or not, I don't know. I wasn't there, but it's possible. So Chris had gotten so fed up with Shanann that he started grounding up oxycodone and putting it in the smoothies so she could miscarry. All the while, Shanann is still posting on social media with her life, and acting like it's not an absolute shambles. The drive back to Aberdeen, North Carolina was awkward, and they drove back in silence for 3 hours. Shanann started thinking about her future with Chris. She started really trying to decide whether or not this was going to work out. And being drugged didn't help her during her pregnancy either, because she was starting to spot. Now, Chris is talking to Nikki about marrying her and finalizing his divorce, which isn't happening yet. He's stalling. I mean, Shanann eventually would start trying to repair the relationship, but being in a relationship with Nikki made him feel liberated. He deactivated his Facebook. He then told Shanann that he didn't want the third child. Quote, "He has changed. I don't know who he is. He hasn't touched me all week, kissed me. What if he doesn't love me anymore?" He even told Kessinger that they were splitting everything 50-50. That wasn't even what? While visiting family in North Carolina, Chris told his family the situation, and Jamie definitely knew something was off. She said, quote, "He had this game plan." This is what his father said. I'm sorry. "He had this game plan. He looked at me and said, 'Dad, I don't need that big ass house and making payments all the time.' His sister said he seemed strong for once." Shanann was having second thoughts about returning to Colorado. She felt isolated. She was confused. Not to mention, she's 15 fucking weeks pregnant, and her husband told her he don't want the baby. Quote, "I was trying to get you to fucking hug me, make me feel safe. This is much better than lack of conversation. She said, "This is much deeper than lack of conversation. Make me feel like everything is going to be okay. It will be okay," says Chris. "This will get fixed. No, I don't need words, damn it. You just told me you don't want this baby. Something changed in the last 5 weeks, something you won't say. I'm scared, okay? You wanted the truth, and I told you how I felt." Her friends were trying to reassure her, telling her that he's probably just scared. Now, men who don't want kids. We are seeing this kind of play out with Krishan Rock and Blueface. Yeah, I told you all, I think that relationship's going to end up an investigation discovery episode. Yesterday or whenever this week, she knocked his records off the wall. And when he walked in, she was barefoot walking on glass. And I said to myself, why does this look like a horror film? And this is one of those situations sometimes, and it could be man or woman, never push baby into a fucking corner. I do not feel comfortable putting men in corners. Because, and it could have worked both ways in this situation, because Blueface could blow Krishan Rock's brains out or vice versa. And I low key feel like if Chris had pushed her, Shanann to a certain extent, who knows what she was capable of either. Who knows? I think that people get pushed into corners, and that's when they do something really damaging. I firmly believe that when you want to get a motherfucker out, pacify the situation as long as you can. Do not be the enemy. Do not press them. I am not going to keep you here. I am willing to take that L. I'm willing to lose you. I think that's what people, when they're in these situations, sometimes that's the fear. To a certain extent, because I have abandonment issues, I have accepted the fact that every now and again you lose people. It hurts. It'll always hurt. But we'll all be walking around, going to Target, going to bars and shit. Maybe you hear some shit. Maybe your parents talk shit at Thanksgiving, but that is the extent. You free. You're not in prison. You're not risking some dude named Tony fucking you in the ass in the shower. You're not in these shitty situations. And so to me, 99.9% of the time, motherfucker want to leave, let him leave. I ain't gonna, I've done that before. That screaming down the block shit, trying to figure out why you leaving and crying. No, no, I don't have time. I'd rather cry in my bathtub. Than give anybody else that energy. And mind you, I know for good and goddamn well this woman got 2 kids. I get it. There are kids involved. Take that nigga to court, call it a day. I'm not putting baby in a corner. Nope. I will ruin a motherfucker's life just enough. I'm not trying to ruin it completely. I promise you. You know, I'm not saying she should have had an abortion. Of course not. But I don't know. Anyway, now Chris is simultaneously telling Nikki that the house is up for sale and that he would need to find a new place. And a few hours later, Kessinger went public with their relationship. When Chris and Shanann arrived back in California, Shanann shared with her friends that he wanted to have, Colorado. Shanann shared with her friends that she wanted to have sex, but was apprehensive and scared to initiate. She said, quote, "He's in the shower. I just got out. I'm so horny. I'm sure even if he hates me, sex is sex." Christina, one of her friends, told her, "Stay naked and go for it. How do I approach him?" She said. "You just jump in the shower with him. Go wash his back. Okay, he's getting out. Pray I get sex tonight." And a couple hours later, Shanann texts that Chris had spurned her advances and she'd been bawling her eyes out for an hour and was trembling. "Just went and woke his sorry ass up," she wrote, "and asked him who he was sleeping with. He denied anyone." The following Wednesday, Shanann was to have an ultrasound performed. Chris was at work and Shanann posted on Facebook for the first time in her usual upbeat tone. When Chris arrived at work, he told the boss that he and Shanann were having problems and asked for Friday off to take Shanann to the airport for her Arizona trip. After work, Chris immediately drove to Nikki's house. They had sex and he went to take Shanann to the doctor. During the ultrasound, Chris was unresponsive. Shanann gave Nicole the gender results, only to later get a text from Nicole that the gender, to text Nicole. I'm tweaking. To later text Nicole that the gender reveal party was off. So she gave Nicole the gender results because there was supposed to be a gender reveal party and neither one of them wanted to know. But then later, Nicole gets a text that the gender reveal party is off. She said, "Can you tell me what I'm having? I need some happy news." Nicole responded, "Yes, I can. Are you sure?" Shannon ended up having the party anyway, finding out that she was having a baby boy, and they named him Nico Lee Watts. Now, Shanann goes on a work trip to Scottsdale, Arizona for a weekend. Chris had emotionally checked out and was already scheduling his date with Nikki. Shanann is thinking that they're going to work things out because the night before they had a conversation that she thought was promising, and she would buy a book called Hold Me Tight, thinking that he would read it, but he would later throw it in the garbage. Shanann was distracted. So although Shanann gamely attended training sessions, she spent most of her time alone in her hotel room reading Hold Me Tight and writing another letter to Chris about how to mend their marriage. Shanann wrote this: "My dearest Chris, I don't know where to begin. I'm so lost for words. I can't even explain how hard this pain is. The last 5 weeks have been the hardest. I missed everything about you. I missed your morning breath, your touch, your lips, kisses. I missed holding you. I missed smelling you in the sheets. I missed talking to you in person. I missed watching you laugh and playing with the kids that I love so much about you. I miss seeing you naked on top of me, making love to me. Oh my God. I missed having you around when I felt alone and upset. I just flat out missed the hell out of you. We haven't been away from each other that long since 2012. I really don't know how we fell out of compatibility, or if that's someone else's words. The only thing that changed this was everything going down with your family. I can't change what happened, but can try to work things out with them. But there has to be a mutual respect for everyone. I definitely deserve an apology because of Celeste. I can suck up to her going against everything I said to our kids, but our daughter's life? One night, while Shanann was in her room, she got a text from the bank that their credit card had been used for $68 at the Lazy Dog. She hit Chris up to ask what he ate. He said he had a salmon and a beer. She thought that was high for one person, but her antenna went up, and she was like, yo, you need to run me a receipt for tax purposes. So she shared this with her friends, and she was very eager to get home at this point. I was just thinking about, funny, like $68. That's like your meal and like 2 drinks in Chicago. Cause I'm like, nobody would have been able to catch my ass up. Like, this bitch got 12 margaritas. This is her tab. She was the only one now. So Nikki goes, and she's communicating with her friend. She's playing the players game, and she's telling her friend about her new boyfriend. She's like, keeping it a secret. She texts, dude loves to eat pussy. Never met a man who does till now. I just let it happen. LOL. Where did you meet this man? I think he really likes me. It's the best sex I've ever had. I'm hooked. Kessinger sent a photo of her and Chris Watts together. Like, he seems too good to be true. He's very handsome. He works out, so he's super sexy. And you look really happy. Kessinger said that the only concern was that he was coming out of a marriage with 2 young daughters and didn't want to always be the second place in his life. Like, he's been out there and done that. She texts, it's early though. We will see. He is very kind to me though. Second is not bad. It's after the first fuck up, a person learns they really want what they really want in a human being. Don't tell nobody. I haven't made up my mind on him yet. How old is he? Her friend asked. 33, I think. He's all about his kids. The fact that he takes care of his kids is a good thing, I think. I will say there are some aspects of Nikki that remind me of myself. Because I've been in situations where I'm like caught in the middle of some shit, and it's like I like a dude, but then like I can't completely tell my friends how much I like a dude, but then I'm like telling them like enough so they know that I still got control over myself. Even though I don't. You're like, I got this. You're like, I fucking don't got this. So her text exchange with her friends kind of cracked me up because I'm like, yo, I'm pretty sure I had this same text message conversation before. Seriously. Okay. I was just, taking a moment. Now, that following Monday, Shanann made it home to Denver Airport. She arrived at home at 1:25 a.m. on August 13, 2018, as she was spotted on the house's Ring camera. Now, she was driven home by her friend, Nicole. Now, I know there's Nikki. That's his side piece. But then there's Nicole, who is Shanann's friend. Chris heard her come in and get into bed. She started rubbing on him, and they ended up having sex. She said, I felt totally strange. This is what he said. I felt totally strange. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I'd become. It didn't even feel right with me. He woke up later and told Shanann that they needed to talk. I told her, I don't feel like this is going to work. Can we cancel the trip to Aspen? Because they were supposed to go on another work trip to Aspen. Shanann asked him if there was someone else. And then she started to cry. She said she was leaving with Bella and Celeste, and he would never see them again. Pause. Boom. This is an out. This is an out. That's what an out looks like. We got any men listening? Because I know men don't fuck with you crying for real, because it'd be like a man bashing sesh. But that's an out. That is when you say, bet, yeah, I'm fucking another bitch. Because to sit up here and put on false appearances like the shit ain't what it is dumb. Because, it's ego. Because then part of it is too, is like you don't want to actually tell this person that this is what you're doing. You don't want to seem like a bad guy. But it's like, boom, there's an out. Motherfucking men need to work on their cues. Because again, I said this on the last episode. Women can fucking take the truth. Just do it. Just do it. The truth is better than a fucking year, 2, 3, 4 of you constantly lying until you get caught. Just fucking 30 seconds of the truth is better than 4 or 5 years of a fucking lie. Because lies snowball. You got to keep the lie. You got to remember the lie. They get bigger. You got to continue to lie to make that lie more valid. It's no point. So, according to Chris, he told her he didn't love her anymore. And he proceeded to put his hands around her throat and he strangled her. He stared into her eyes until they were bloodshot and mascara ran down her face. Bella woke up and saw Shanann lying in the bed, dead. "What's wrong with mommy?" she asked. "Mommy don't feel good," he replied. Then he took the top sheet off the bed and wrapped Shanann's body in it, leaving the pillows and the comforter on the floor. He attempted to pick her up and carry her downstairs, but she was too heavy. He dragged Shanann's lifeless body down the stairs and into the garage as his 4-year-old daughter trailed behind. She was crying a little bit, Watts recalled. "She's like, 'What's wrong with mommy?' I said, 'She doesn't feel good.' But she's a smart girl and she knew something was going on." At 5:17, Chris backed his truck into the garage and put his wife in the back of the truck after putting her in 2 garbage bags, dropping her on the floor behind the driver's seat. He then grabbed his lunchbox and water along with a gas can. He went back into the house to get Bella and Celeste. He placed them in the back seat while Shanann was on the floor. He kept telling them that Shanann was fine. And at 5:45, he left. They were pretty quiet, Watts remembered. They just laid next to each other when we were driving. Bella said, "Daddy, it smells." By 6:30 a.m., Chris started reaching out to coworkers, telling them not to disturb him for a couple hours and making sure none of them were on their way to 319 Oil Well. He got out and lifted out Shanann's body, dragging her across the parking lot. Celeste asked what he was doing with her. He didn't answer. And Bella watched as Chris smothered Celeste with her blanket, using all his weight to press her against the back seat. He took Celeste across the parking lot next and walked up the set of stairs and lowered her body feet first into an 8-inch opening, dropping her down a crude oil shaft. He closed the hatch, came back to the car. "What happened to Cece?" she asked softly. "Will the same thing happen to me?" "Yes," her father replied, as he grabbed the blanket and came her way. "Daddy, no," screamed Bella, as his hand went over her mouth. He then took Bella's body up the stairs and dropped her down the hatch, except Bella was too big for the opening, so he had to force her body down, which led to him scraping the skin off her shoulders and buttocks. Getting rid of Shanann's body required him to dig a hole. It was only 27 inches deep, and when he looked at her body, he saw that she had miscarried their son. He covered them in dirt, and at 7:40 a.m., he sent a text to her phone. Quote, "If you take the kids somewhere, please let me know where they are." Chris was completely detached. He started calling coworkers to cover his tracks. And at 8:25, he called Shanann's phone again, leaving a voicemail. He then called the girls' school to tell them that his family was moving and would no longer be attending the school. Then he asked if they had arrived at the school that morning. 3 minutes later, he called the realtor to ask if Shanann had been in touch because he and Shanann were getting a divorce. At 10:10, he searched at least 6 times for the lyrics to Battery, which was a Metallica song about killing a family. He gets a call from Sandy asking if Shanann is okay. He tells her that they'd argued that morning and Shanann took the kids and went to a friend's house. He ain't know where they were. He then called the hotel to cancel the hotel booking for the Aspen trip. Meanwhile, Nicole is completely alarmed because she missed her doctor's appointment and the girls had not shown up for school. Remember, Nicole is Shanann's friend. By midday, Nicole had taken her son to the Watts home, but Chris wasn't there. She looked in the window and saw Shanann's shoes and luggage was still sitting by the door, and her car was still in the garage, as well as the girls' car seats. When Nicole's son tried to open the garage door, he triggered the alarm. Here's the benefit, again, to telling everybody your business and being consistent. Chris's habits are what ultimately get him in trouble as well. Now, Chris gets an alert on his phone. He's 40 miles away, dodging all her friends calling, telling them different stories about Shanann's whereabouts. Also not pressed at all to get home and see where his wife and kids are. By 1:36 p.m., Nicole was fed up and she called the non-emergency line for the Frederick Police Department.
Communications, this is Stacy. Hi, Stacy. My name is Nicole, and I'm calling because I'm concerned about a friend of mine. I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning last night because we were out of town together, and we were on the way back from the airport, and issues, and she's pregnant, and I haven't been able to get a hold of her this morning, and I've gone to her house, and her car's there, and stuff like that, but she won't answer the door, she won't answer phone calls, she won't answer text messages, and I'm just really, really concerned, and she had a doctor's appointment this morning, and she didn't go to it, and I don't know what to do. I called him and talked to him, and he said that she went on a play date with her other two daughters, but, like, if she went on a play date, they're both in car seats. Why would she not take her car?
Perfectly understandable. Do you happen to know her address, Nicole?
I'm at the house. 2825 Saratoga Trail in Frederick. And then I said, like, Chris, can you just come home and check to make sure she's okay? Because the shoes she wears every single day are right inside her door. And he was like, yeah, I'll be there in 3 minutes. Well, that was 45 minutes ago. And I called him and asked him again, can you please come home? And he's like, I'm 45 minutes out.
Okay, Nicole, I'll go ahead and get a call in. I just need you, if you could please repeat her address to make sure I have it entered correctly.
2825 Saratoga is Saratogatr.
Okay.
I think stands for trail.
Thank you. And can I get a phone number that you're calling me from? Area code first.
4 minutes later, the police showed up. Nicole was confused. She didn't understand why her luggage was still by the door, her shoes were still by the door, and her car was still in the garage, not to mention the fact that the girls' car seats were in the garage as well. Quote, I've called, I've texted, her shoes she wears every single day are right here. She says no answer on the phone. Her husband's on the way, supposedly, adding that he kept changing his arrival times. Then the officer asked Nicole to call Chris for the garage passcode and permission to enter. She did, telling Chris that the police were at the house and couldn't get in. Watts said he was only 5 minutes away and didn't want them to break the door down. So he just hung up, sent another message to Shanann's iPhone saying, where are you? Chris said he was only 5 minutes away when he was actually 45 minutes away, and he showed up after 3 hours. He pulled up at 2:07. He had stopped to change his clothes and throw away the dirty ones. Then he stopped at the gas station where he bought some snacks and apparently was caught shamelessly flirting with the cashier. So when he finally arrived, he let the cops inside to search. He was acting completely stoic. He wasn't even worried or concerned at all by the fact that he had no idea where his children were. He gave the officers permission to look around the home. Chris would even make comments like, quote, all the girls' blankies, they're gone. They don't leave anywhere without them. Then they found Shanann's phone, which was really odd considering she would never leave anywhere without her phone. Quote, she works from home, said Watts, rushing over to turn it on. And this is her lifeline. So then Nicole told him to check the cameras and see what time she left, because he told Nicole that she went on a play date, but then told another friend that she had left in the middle of the night. Chris said, oh no, she didn't leave in the middle of the night. The officers started asking about their relationship, to which Chris replied that they were going to sell the house and separate. Then they walked into the bedroom where they found the sheets were off the bed. This alarmed Nicole because she couldn't understand why the sheets were missing if she was such a neat freak. Is there any of her clothes missing? The officer asked. There was a big ass closet. Watts was like, no, it would be hard to tell if she took a little bit. Officer, okay. Did she say anything about leaving, moving out, not moving out? The last time I talked to her was this morning. She says she was going to take the kids to a friend's house, but the car's still here. Unless someone came and picked her up. Any behavioral changes? We're going through a separation. That's been the only change. Then they proceeded to go to the neighbors. It was a man by the name of Nathaniel Trinistich. He had a camera as well. It faced the driveway of Chris's property. They saw on the video that Chris backed into the garage at 5:17, which is something he never did. He said, quote, I loaded my stuff up with my coolers, my water jugs, explained Watts, as he nervously played with his iPhone. My bug bag, some of the tools I had from the toolbox. I knew I was going to have to do some pumping in the rubbers today because I was out so far. I usually park out there on the side, said Watts, his hand on the back of his head and not looking at the screen. I just went to get all the tools I had to bring in. What they did see at 1:48 was Shanann coming in, and the only other movement was at 5:17 when Chris was backing into the garage. So, Chris, when did Shanann leave, you think? Like, when did Shanann leave? Nothing for the rest of the day? Asked the officer. No, that's it. She's pregnant as well, observed Watts as he toyed with his phone. How far along? Asked the cop. 14, 15 weeks, Watts replied. That's why her friend said it was low blood sugar. Did you go and check whether anything was missing around your house? Asked Trinistich. There was nothing, Watts replied. Her wedding ring was on the nightstand. Her phone was still there. After several more minutes of nervously fidgeting, Watts shook his neighbor's hand and thanked them and left. Trinistich said he's not acting right at all. He's rocking back and forth. He never moves his stuff in and out of the garage, ever. The officer's like, right. Trinistich says, to be completely honest with you, my wife and I were kind of wondering when she was on vacation if something happened, because I've heard them full out screaming at each other at the top of their lungs, and he gets crazy. Officer, does he? And that's pretty recent? Yeah, well, that's why we thought she went and visited people, because she wanted to get away from the situation. He's acting so suspicious. He's normally quiet and well subdued, never talks. So the fact that he's over here blabbing his mouth makes me kind of suspicious. Nicole returns with the request from Sandy. She wants them to check the GPS of Chris's truck because she thought he was a suspect. Nicole was also suspicious of Chris's behavior. At 2:35, Detective Dave Baumhover arrived at the house. They knew her belongings were still in the house and proceeded to go back into the bedroom. No obvious signs of foul play. The detective asked Chris when he had last seen his wife and daughters. Now, Watts said he had arrived from the airport at 1:48 a.m. when he received a doorbell camera alert to his phone. At approximately 0400 hours, he informed Shanann he wanted to initiate a marital separation and that they were both upset and crying. It should be noted, when I asked Watts a second time to recall his day, he told me he worked in his basement for 15 minutes that morning before returning to the bedroom to speak with Shanann about the marital separation. I asked if they were planning on living together during the separation. Watts said he would get an apartment somewhere and Shanann and the girls could move into a smaller house and they would share custody of their kids. Watts showed the detective an email from the realtor on his cell phone to prove that they wanted to sell the house. He also pointed out an alert at the garage door was left open at 5:27, as well as another from the basement door earlier. He appeared to be puzzled by those alerts and asked So they asked where he had gone that morning. Watts said he had driven to the oil well site near Hudson, but couldn't remember the name. Quote, I asked Watts if anyone could vouch his arrival. He said no one else was at the site until later, and he had gone earlier to check on a repair before starting his normal duties. The detective then interviewed Nicole Atkinson, who said that Shanann could only have left the house through the garage because the front door safety latch was still on. She also told him that Watts never backed his truck up to the garage as the noise woke the girls. The girls' room was right above the garage. Nicole was adamant that Shanann would not leave the house without her phone or medication, or taking the girls anywhere without their car seats. The county dispatch put out a bolo, be on the lookout for Shanann and the girls. They searched the area, they talked to neighbors, they were looking for leads, and everyone was worried. Her family was obviously freaking out as well. Sandy went on social media hoping to find out if anybody else knew of her whereabouts. Her brother was losing it. Her friends offered support to the Watts, but he refused and even told one friend that the police told him he was not allowed to search. All of the friends that knew about their marital problems kind of figured it was him. When Addie Maloney asked if there was any news of Shanann, Watts replied, I'm so sorry. He said, I'm so worried. She then sent out a group text. The police need to look at Chris's cell and the computer. Another friend of Shanann's also confronted Watts about everyone's suspicions. You know how this looks. Watts said he was aware that everyone was mad at him, but did not know how they could think he would do something to harm Shanann and his daughters. Now, meanwhile, Chris talks to Nikki, unbothered by the fact that his entire family was missing. She didn't take it that seriously because he didn't. Chris let them freely search his house. He was incredibly cooperative. He would even go on a news network and plead to the camera for Shanann and the kids' safe return.
WATTS.
What's going on right now at your house?
Right now it's got K9 units, the sheriff's department. Everybody's like they're doing their best right now to figure out like if they can get a scent, see where they went. If they went on foot, they went in a car, or they went somewhere. And right now it's just like they've been on point. They're going through the house trying to get a scent, and hopefully they can pick something up to where it's going to lead to something.
What happened?
She came home from the airport 2 a.m. and I left around 5:15. She was still here. And like about 12:10 in that afternoon, her friend Nicole showed up at the door. Like I had texted Shanann a few times that day, called her, say, but she never got back to me, but she wasn't getting back to any of her people as well. And that's what really concerned a lot of people is like, she's not getting back to her, like if she doesn't get back to me, that's fine. Like she gets busy during the day, but she didn't get back to her people, which was very concerning. And Nicole called me when she was at the door, and that's when I came home.
He would go as so far to say shit like, quote, it's empty here. I need my family back. But everybody still thought that he was a suspect. He's like, it's something like out of a movie. She's just gone. Her purse is here. Her ID is here. Her car is here. The kid's medicine is here. She just disappeared. So they finally submit a missing persons report. Now, it should be mentioned, according to the officer, that, quote, he did not ask me if I had been calling because I had any information concerning his wife or daughters, or if I was calling because they had been found. Sandy had contacted the police department and told them that she thinks it's Chris. She thought that he was acting weird and was still planning to go to work even though his family was missing. Now, mind you, Nikki didn't even know Shanann was pregnant until she saw it on the news. And after some time, even though she was acting kind of strange, she was like, when I read the news, I thought, if I was able to lie to me and hide something that big, what else would I lie about? And I was like, you need to focus on finding all 3 of your kids. And he was just like emphasizing. She was like, I kept emphasizing that he had 3 kids. And so then finally Watts admits that the baby was his and he had known about it the whole time. And once again, he anxiously asked if this would ruin their relationship. Kessinger said no. She said, in the back of my mind, it's like, yeah, I'm done, she later said, but his situation is so critical, I'm not going to ruffle his feathers. For the next 4 hours, Kessinger closely monitored online news coverage, realizing that everything Watts had told her was an absolute lie. Quote, I got so sick. I packed my stuff and I left work and I went home. I just needed some time to process what was going on. Now they go back to the house. Chris had cleaned the whole goddamn place. He had really cleaned. They smelled harsh chemicals and all types of shit. Now, apparently, the cadaver dogs picked up a scent of trauma and struggle, which I did not know that they could do. The dogs were taken to Watts's work truck, which was parked outside, but the dog detected something. But they didn't enter the vehicle because it was locked. That don't make no sense to me. You could just do that. You're like, you know what? Fuck the work vehicle. I mean, maybe because they needed to get a warrant. I don't know. But I'm like, tell this motherfucker to open the car. Like, what's the problem? But then they really, really started to get irritated with how stoic he was. He just didn't seem to care enough. There were 6 Colorado Bureau of Investigation officers and the FBI. They arranged with Chris's job to get his work cell information and his GPS data from his truck. And over the next several days, they searched like a mofo for these people. This case was everywhere. It even went national. They were interviewing on him on several segments. After like a few strange interviews, the CBI just decided, you know what, let's just bring him in for questioning. Watts agreed to the questioning. Meanwhile, Nikki started deleting shit, pretty much anything that connected her to Chris, and she asked him if he could do the same. Then she started researching how long phone companies keep messages, which I'm like, girl, they gonna find all that shit. Like, they gonna look in your search history. Like, nothing's ever really deleted. So when Chris arrived, they asked him to give a written statement of what happened. Then they spent the next 3 hours breaking it apart and questioning every detail. Then they asked him if he would take a polygraph, which he agreed. Now, leaving him in the interrogation room to marinate, they caught him on camera just staring blankly at the wall. Now, they did force him to stay in custody while they were continuing searching his house and going through all his personal shit. And the CBI eventually found out from his Anadarko emails that he was having an affair with a fellow employee since June 2018. Her name was Nikki Kessinger. And at the same time, Nikki contacts the police with important information about the case. I mean, she was like, I got to figure out how to get out of this scot-free because this is too close to home. They reach out to Chris regarding the case and they ask if he would swing by the police station. And he told them that, you know, he just picked his father up from the airport and he was on his way to take the polygraph. According to Chris, quote, he just wanted to talk about sports. Chris later recalled this is his father. His father was saying that Chris was saying that his father only wanted to talk about sports. He always kind of distanced himself from, problems. So he maybe asked just a few questions like, do you know where they're at? I just told him no. He was like, man, no. So Ronnie just took it and just was like, whatever. So when they arrive, Chris, prepares for his test and his father is being questioned. And Ronnie told the agent how Shanann had like a blowout with his wife over Nutgate, and the last time he'd seen her. That was the last time he'd seen her. So he described that, she was controlling, she was narcissistic, she was possibly bipolar, saying that she caused most of the issues that he has with his son. Now, Watts, quote, Watts does not know where Shanann or the children may have gone, noted the agent in his report. Watts was very cooperative and amenable to future contact. Jesus Christ. I'm so high. I'm so sorry. So obviously she told him, you've had a lot of time to think about this stuff and just like talking to me. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking right now as far as what's happening? The first day I thought she was somebody. She's at a friend's house. She's just decompressing. Now I feel like she's not safe. He's like, I thought she was at somebody else's house. Now I feel like she actually may be in trouble. So if I ask you on the polygraph test, if you physically caused Shanann's disappearance, can you pass that question? Yes, he replied resolutely. Why do you think I mean, when I ask you if you physically caused Shanann's disappearance, I feel you're asking me, did I have anything to do with it myself, or did I help somebody do it? And I had no part in any of that. Then she asked, how could you make somebody disappear? And Watt suggested hiring a hitman. That's what I want, she told him. I want you to go through all of these scenarios in your head because I want you to know for sure what I'm talking about when asking if you physically caused her disappearance. So what different physical ways could you cause someone's disappearance through murder? You could stab someone, right? Stab someone, shoot someone, hit them with a blunt object, use a weapon like a gun or a knife. You could smother someone. You could smother someone. He agreed. You could strangle someone. Angel Lee fixing his eyes on him. I mean, you can. It's hard to even think about that kind of stuff right now. Agent Lee asked if he would have any issues when she questioned whether or not he had caused his wife and his daughter's disappearance, and he said, I can definitely pass. When I ask you if you physically caused Shanann's disappearance, your answer should be what? No. Agent Lee then told him the three questions he had to answer in the polygraph. Did you cause Shanann's disappearance? When was the last time you saw her? And do you know where she is now? I'm going to ask you about Shanann. I think we can all assume that wherever Shanann is, the little girls are. Yeah. So we just went through every single question on that test. How would you answer them on the test? Okay. We kind of have to expect the worst and hope for the best. If we do end up finding your wife and your two girls murdered, what do you think should happen to the person who would have done that? The worst possible thing, either life in prison or the death penalty, isn't it? That's the only two things you can really do. Then the agent took a break to give him time to contemplate before the polygraph. At 2 p.m., the CBI agents were at the remote oil site of Survey Ranch 319. Quote, the Anadarko supervisor explained the layout of the site. It had a wellhead, a separator, 3 storage tanks mounted on a gravel pad. He told them that after the oil, gas, and water were separated, the gas is pumped to another location while the mixture of the oil and the water is stored in 2 giant holding tanks, each with a capacity of 400 barrels. And after separating inside the barrels, the water is fed into a third smaller holding tank, leaving just the oil in the 2 big ones. A drone had started taking like these aerial shots of the area. And when they noticed a sheet lying on the ground, they were like, wait a minute now. So when they checked it out, they noticed that it was freshly dug up. They noticed the sheet was the same sheet, the one that was found in Chris's garbage, because the agent had the garbage images emailed to him and the sheets were a perfect match. They then found 2 garbage bags with red draw ties. Chris failed the shit out of that polygraph. For someone who was a truth teller, said Agent Lee, we would consider them to be a grade 2 or higher. And we would consider someone to be deceptive if they were a -4 or below. Chris Watts scored a -18. So now the detectives want to hear the real story. Chris finally tells him that he cheated on Shanann, which they already knew. They tell that they just don't think his story makes sense, and they believe he knows what happened because people just don't fall off the face of the earth like that. So they're finally frank with him. They think he's entirely too nonchalant about his family being missing. Finally, quote, this is Chris. Can I just talk to my dad? Ronnie comes in. Ronnie, they've had me back here forever, boy. You gonna tell them what's going on? Chris, so they're not gonna let me go. Ronnie, is there any reason why they shouldn't? They know I had an affair. I came clean about that. Ronnie asked Chris if he wanted to tell him anything about Shanann and the girls. We had a conversation that morning. It was emotional. I told her about the separation and everything like that. Well, what happened after that? I went downstairs. I don't want to protect her. What? I don't want to protect her. But I don't know what else to say. What happened? She hurt them. She hurt them? Yeah. And then I freaked out and I hurt her. What now? And I freaked out and I hurt her. You hurt her? So she started hurting the kids. Talk to me, Chris. What happened? She smothered them. They were smothered. They what? She strangled them. She smothered them? I didn't hear anything when I was upstairs. I came back up and they were gone. I don't know. Like me talking to her about the separation and everything. And she lost it? I freaked out. I did the same fucking thing to her. Those are my kids. Oh, Lord, have mercy, says Ronnie, becoming emotional. She freaked out over the separation and everything. Chris explained that after leaving Shanann in the bedroom, he had gone downstairs to leave for work. And when he heard a little commotion upstairs, then he came upstairs to find Shanann on top of Celeste. What? Choking her? Or did she kill her? They were blue. Both of them? Yes. She choked both of them to death? I freaked out and I did the same thing to her. Oh my God. I don't know what to say. Like, I didn't call the cops about it. So then what'd you do? Haul the bodies off or something? Sorry, I don't know what else to do. Chris said that Shanann knew about his affair, and after he came clean, he lost it. Well, she lost it, and she strangled Bella and Celeste. So why the hell would she have to hurt them babies? Oh Lord, Ronnie's fucked up about this. I know. Chris started to weep. I'm so sorry. You know I love you no matter what. I know, but this is the last time I'm going to see the light of day again. Ronnie asked if the agent knew, and Chris said that he wanted to tell him first. She actually killed both her children, and you snapped, and you did the same thing to her in a fit of rage. We'll need to find a good lawyer and see what the hell they can do. The agents were listening, but still asked him to explain what happened. Agent comes back in. Are you okay? No, he's not, said Ronnie. Then Agent Lee asked Chris to tell them what he had just told his father. After taking several seconds to compose himself, Chris told them he had caught Shanann killing the girls. Now adding new details, he said that after hearing the commotion, he'd gone upstairs to check the baby monitor in Bella's bedroom. Both covers were pulled off and she was just laying there. And I thought maybe she was just hot. He told the agents that he had then cycled the monitor to see Cece's room, seeing Shanann choking her, and freaked out and ran and jumped on top of Shanann. The agent asked, "What did you do?" Cece was blue. That was my babies. Those were my kids. What happened? I did the same thing to her right there in Cece's room. He said that after strangling Shanann, he put her back in their bed. What happened next? I don't know what to do. I was shaken. Like both of my kids were blue and they were gone. I'm not that person. She hurt my kids. Fuck, I had to do something to her. He told them that after putting Shanann's body in the bed, he pulled the sheets over her because he couldn't bear to see her. I felt horrible for what I did. And then I looked at my kids and saw what she did, and I didn't know what to do. So where are they now, Chris? We need to find your babies. You did the hard part. All you have to do is tell us where they're at. We can help you get them out of the cold. They're gone. They're not coming. There's no bringing them back. Taking the drone photos, they asked Chris to show where the bodies were in the pictures. They continued to press Watts because they just didn't believe that Shanann killed them. But, they were like, yo, this is a cute bit, but not really. He emphatically denied hurting the kids. And Chris said that Agent Coder, I'm not sure I believe you. I'm not a monster, Watts replied, emotional. I didn't kill my kids. You know, everything I told you is the truth. I think as many problems as you have with Shanann, said Agent Lee, at the end of the day, she seemed like she was a pretty good mom, right? And then he says, I was a pretty good dad as well. So by 6, it was reported that Watts had confessed. They had summoned the coroner. They headed to the scene. At 9:52, the Denver News reported that Watts had killed his wife and his kids. Shanann's family would hear about the news back in North Carolina online. Frankie, Shanann's brother, went online and posted, quote, I just want 30 seconds alone with that heartless psychopath. May Satan have mercy on your soul. My blood is boiling in the pain and anger and sadness I have in my heart. Nothing, absolutely nothing would get in my way of taking away his life like he did mine and my entire family. Back at the scene, they found a rake, a sheet, garbage bags, and strands of Bella's hair found on the oil hatch. They would find the body of Shanann. She was face down, 9 inches below the surface in the fetal position, with her left arm toward her head. She was already decomp. She had on blue underwear and a light colored shirt. The amniotic sac containing the fetus was visible. Now back at the station, Chris was handcuffed back at the station, and he had been interrogated for 12 hours. He was held on 3 counts of murder, 3 counts of tampering with physical evidence, and Chris was taken to the Will County Jail, where he was placed on suicide watch. He fell straight to sleep, which we know when a motherfucker is finally just like, I just let it out. You know what I mean? You would think that you wouldn't be able to sleep, but I think your soul is needed the rest at that point. Chris was arrested on August 5th, 2018, which is 2 days after Shanann went missing. Frankie posted, that piece of shit, may he rot in hell. He killed my pregnant sister and my 2 nieces. Her husband, Chris Watts, admitted to murdering my family. We just found out she was pregnant with a baby boy and his name was going to be Nico. Chris's co-workers were devastated. People could not believe something like this would happen to them. And the next day, they worked on finding the girls' bodies. They needed a 3-member team to drain the oil tanks. They were 20 feet tall, 20 feet in diameter. And the tank containing Celeste's body had 9 feet of crude oil in it, and Bella's had 1.4 feet. These tanks were drained through the metal strainer to make sure that no evidence got pulled through. And it took 6 hours to empty. There was going to be a dangerous mission because crude oil is highly toxic and the man can't really be in the tank for more than a few minutes at a time. They found a child's body face down in the tank, her hand degloved of its skin. So they bagged it as evidence and removed Celeste's body and placed it in a decontamination box. She was covered in oil. She was wearing a pink nightgown and a diaper. She had skin slippage and was in a white sheet. Now, I would like to say that in my head, I knew what skin slippage was, and because it's kind of is what it sounds like. Skin slippage is a part of decomposition process when the top layers of the skin become disconnected from the layers below and can therefore slip off the body, taking place relatively early in the process. It happens through a process when enzymes are released and cells holding layers of skin together start to rupture, forming what looks like blisters, leaving a sticky surface behind. As the epidermis layer of the skin separates from the dermis layer, these superficial layers can then start sloughing off, or peeling away. Where this happens on the body can vary greatly, but it's particularly common of the skin to first detach on the hands and feet, where skin can be removed like a sock or a glove cast off and no longer needed. That's what skin slippage is. And, the visual of that is a lot. I think it's hard to think of, trying to be a cop and deal with bodies and shit like that. And I think it's even harder to think about pulling a child's body out of an oil tank and having her skin slip off. Now with Bella's body, she was found in pink pajamas with hearts and butterflies, and she had some skin slippage as well. They found no other evidence. They interviewed Nikki again. Kessinger said she was trying to come to terms with her horrific situation because she just didn't know what the long-term effects was going to be. She was like, quote, "My name is about to be slandered. I don't know how long it's going to take to heal." She was ashamed for a while. After this, she said, "I've thought about this, and sometimes I think to myself, if I wasn't in this man's life, would his family still be alive?" Nikki would later be put on leave from work, and she had to stay with family. She oddly would also get caught searching online Amber Frey, which was the mistress of Scott Peterson, and whether or not, what was it? It was like whether or not the best-selling book of Scott Peterson, like after she wrote it, whether or not she was hated for it, which I'm like, I mean, I guess she's just not thinking that they're looking at her search history, but they are. Now, she was eventually, after her leave, she was eventually fired. Nikki was never considered a suspect, which I find, I don't know the legal situation with it. I just find that a little bit interesting that they didn't investigate Nikki more. I'm not saying that obviously that she did anything. How do I know? But you question her, but you don't question her as a suspect. You question her as just like an involved person. Like, who was Chris? But then for them to also be looking at her search history is indicative of them thinking something, but probably more so on the side of Chris. Like, what was he telling her and things like that? Because I'm like, was there no air of suspicion with Nikki? I mean, couples plot to kill people all the time. Who knows? Now, during the autopsy, they noticed that Shanann's hyoid bone was not broken, although she did have bruising to the soft tissue on the right side of the hyoid bone. Hyoid bone is that bone that's usually broken during strangulation. Considering she was smothered, I'm assuming that the hyoid bone doesn't break in the same way that, even though they said that she was strangled, her hyoid bone wasn't broken. The cause of death was asphyxiation due to manual strangulation. Excuse me. I was like, wait a minute. Why can't I say that word? Manual strangulation. So I guess I don't know. I feel like strangulation situations always lead to the hyoid bone breaking, but I don't know. I don't fucking know. I don't know that for real. I just know what I hear on documentaries. Excuse me. Now, the manner of death was homicide. During Bella's autopsy, they noticed that she had scrapes on her buttocks and the top of both of her shoulders. Her top lip was torn and her inner lip was just like it was bruised. Her injuries were caused by a downward pressure on her nose and mouth, the smothering, which caused her to bite into her tongue. It appears she has struggled. Her cause of death was asphyxiation by smothering, and the manner of death was homicide. Celeste's body had a lot of skin slippage with no signs of bruising around the neck, but still, the likely cause of death was considered asphyxiation due to smothering. Manner of death. Honestly, it's fucked up to have to read this. I'm just being honest. Because even when I was like doing all this research and I'm like, how do you do this to your kid? That's how you know you're dealing with a true psycho. Pussy. A new bitch. You got a daughter who bit into her tongue because you put all your weight on her nose and mouth to kill her. And then you just dropped her body. First of all, Bella couldn't fit. So then you literally crammed her body down an oil well. Anyway, side note. During Shanann's autopsy, they found that her blood alcohol level was 0.128, which was above the legal limit. Quote, this does not mean that she consumed alcohol nor that she was intoxicated. That blood alcohol level is very consistent with normal human decomp based on the location and the manner that Shanann and Nico's bodies were buried. I don't understand that at all. You know what I do understand? I understand Shanann coming home to her shitty husband after she had a couple of glasses of red wine on a plane. Shanann was buried. She wasn't in oil. She was buried. What part of normal human decomp leads to high blood alcohol levels? Because I feel like a lot of bodies would have blood alcohol levels that are above the legal limit. You know? Because when I did Tamla Horsford and blood alcohol level was high, and, you know, wasn't because of normal human decomp, it was because she was drunk. So this to me is them, because this also is a part of her file that's sealed, and I'm thinking it's because they don't want to disgrace Shanann because she was drinking while she was pregnant. And it excuse me, it depends on what she was drinking while she was pregnant, but 1.128 is above the legal limit. So what was she drinking? Anyway, I don't have anything else on that. Now, Chris Watts spent his time on suicide watch and was eventually placed in a cell alone where he stared blankly at the wall and did some exercising. The entire jail would be put on lockdown every time he was let out for exercise because every inmate in the prison wanted to kill him. Meanwhile, Chris was not suicidal. On August 21st, the DA charged him with 3 counts. Excuse me, damn. The DA on August 21st, this is 8 days after her disappearance, charged him with 3 counts of first-degree murder after deliberation, 2 counts of first-degree murder of a victim under 12 by a person in position of trust, 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body, and 1 count of first-degree unlawful termination of a pregnancy. Chris waived the right to a preliminary hearing. His bail was finally set at $5 million, and he had to put 15% down to be released, which we obviously know he did not have. They could not cremate the remains because they were flammable, so they safely secured Bella and Celeste in sealed coffins so that the dangerous gases would not leak out. There were 2 separate services since everybody hated the Wattses at this point. Chris Watts pled guilty on November 6, 2018. Shanann's family requested that he not get the death penalty, accepted his plea deal, considering they didn't want anyone else to die. And November 19th, Chris was sentenced to 5 life sentences, 3 consecutive terms, and 2 concurrent and 3 consecutive. So 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. He got an additional 48 years of termination of pregnancy and 36 for 3 charges of tampering with a deceased body. The Wattses also questioned why Chris never received the psychic vow, and they felt that the cops just felt like he had no reason to. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the legalities with that, but he ain't giving crazy, so why would they? He's now in Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin. I'm fucked up. I'm so sorry. Chris would talk to the Colorado investigators again and give them another story. The one we know now, which is the one I told earlier, the one where he tells the actual story of him, talking to her. And then killing her, not the one that he told his father. We don't know which one is true, and we'll truly never know. So They go on and they ask him, finally, they meet him in Wisconsin, the CBI detectives, they meet him in Wisconsin and they say, so tell us the story. What happened? And he says, so nothing really happened that night. She got home at 2 and I felt her get into bed. He said he felt her stirring around and had a feeling she knew he was cheating because of the high restaurant credit card charge. And he started rubbing her, she started rubbing her hand on me and we ended up having sex, but I guess that was more like a test. He said that during the sex, something had gone off in his head. It may be like a trigger point. You have to push a button on a bomb and it just blows up. They had then gone to sleep for a couple hours, and after getting dressed for work, he came back into the bedroom to tell her that he wanted a separation. Shanann accused him of seeing somebody else, and he wouldn't admit it. He said, I just felt guilty, more guilty than ever before. He said they had spoken for about half an hour, and he asked her to cancel their trip to Aspen the next weekend. Then he got back in bed and climbed on top of her, straddling her waist. She told him to get off so he didn't hurt the baby. She then told him she was leaving and he'd never see her or the kids again. Upon hearing this, he put his hands around her neck and strangled her. It's like the whole everything that happened that morning. I just don't know. Like, I try to go back in my head and I'm just like, I didn't want to do this, but I did it. And everything kind of like agent asked, did you feel like you had to? I just felt like it was, I don't even want to say, I felt like I had to. I just felt like there was already something in my head that was implanted that I was going to do it and I had no control over it. You never thought about it before? Like, in the sentencing hearing, that prosecutor said it takes 2 to 4 minutes for something like that to happen. Why couldn't I just let go? I didn't. Was it like feeling like it was in motion? You just couldn't stop it? Asked the detective. Yeah, it's like, I don't even want to know what she saw when she looked back at me, honestly. Did you look at her? He questioned. What was she doing? She was fighting. Maybe she was praying. He said that Bella had then walked in and asked what was wrong with her mother. He told her that she wasn't feeling well. I put Shanann in that sheet that you found at the site and carried her downstairs and backed the truck up. As she had carried, I'm getting my pronouns fucked up. As he had carried her downstairs, her foot hit each step, waking up Celeste, who came out to see what was going on. Then as Bella trailed behind, asking what he was doing to mommy, he had loaded Shanann's body in the back of the truck. Was Bella alive when you guys get in the truck? Yeah. Okay. What happened? We went back up. I don't really want to talk about this part. Those were my kids. I don't want to talk about that night. Every time I see pictures of them, I don't know how this could have happened. Being a dad was the best part of my life. I took it all away. That's the hardest part about being us, Chris, said Tammy Lee, is that we see those videos and that love that you have for your girls, and it's hard to understand how a dad who's given piggyback rides and making snacks and watching princess movies and those kinds of things, how you get to that point. Something else was controlling me that day, and I had no control over it to fight back. Agent Lee asked what had happened after the girls got in his truck with their blankets and stuffed toys. It's like 45 minutes to an hour ride out there. I'm just kind of nervous, shaking, not knowing what's going to happen. And during the drive, he said the girls lay next to each other, falling asleep. Bella said that it smelled. So what happened when you got out there? I took Shanann out to a place off to the side, he said. He had left the girls in the back truck. And then what happened after that? Cece was first. She had a blue blanket, a Yankee blanket. I put the blanket over her head. I strangled her right there in the back seat. What was Bella doing? She was sitting beside her. She didn't say anything. Then Coder asked what he was thinking when he was smothering Celeste. I wasn't. If I was thinking, this wouldn't have happened. He said he had then pulled Celeste's body out of the truck while Bella helplessly watched from inside. What did you do with her? I put her in the tank. So she went into the tank and Bella was still in the back of the truck alive. Yeah. With regard to that tank, did you bring up Cece, put her down, open the hatch? Brought her up, opened the hatch. And you put her in? Yeah. And so she went in feet first? Yeah. Did you have to move her around a bit to get her in there? I think so. I didn't have to hit her or anything like that. And then close the hatch. Yeah. Watts said he had then returned to his truck for Bella. She said, what happened to Cece? She asked. Will the same thing happen to me as Cece? Okay. So Bella's pretty smart, said Coder. How did she sound when she asked you that, Chris? She had that soft voice she always has. He sobbed. And what exactly did she say? She said, will exactly the same thing happen to me as Cece? And then I said, yes. She said, no, Daddy. And that's the last thing she said. I put that blanket over her too and did the same thing. Agent Coder then asked why Watts had put the girls in separate tanks, and he said there was no reason. Bella was a little bigger, observed Coder. Was she harder to get in? It felt like it a little bit. Watts said that after disposing of his daughters, he buried Shanann's body. I cleared away some weeds. I had a shovel, a rake, and a weed whacker. And as far as our tools in the truck, and so once she buried, then what? That's when people started showing up. I don't get it. I do this because I'm curious, and stories like this don't satisfy that curiosity at all, because you can't make it make sense. I don't have kids. I guess I just don't know what that type of anger looks like. You know, not even anger, but just deranged behavior. I don't want to know what that really looks like, but I'm just saying, just even reading it, you just think about them talking to him and wanting, like, this is why I did this. And I guess it could just be assumed you had a man who was not ever really strong, pushed over, just no real presence. Then he finds this girl who he clearly really, really likes. And she's awakened something in him that he didn't know that he had. But because he's so used to not knowing how to be a person, he doesn't really know how to handle the situation with Shanann and with the kids. Because to me, I'm like, yo, dude, and this is what I said on my Instagram. I'd rather a motherfucker just leave me with the kids than to kill me. Like, if I was the man, I would rather be the scumbag that everybody's calling a piece of shit at Thanksgiving dinner because I dipped off. I'd rather that than jail, life in prison, death penalty, death. How do you balance that? So this concludes Chris Watts. And I'm high, but I'm feeling like I'm going to make me one more drink because this is a lot. So I hope you all learned something from this. I hope with every little story that I tell that you learn a little bit more about yourself. Because we can learn a lot about how we should move from the errors of others, from motherfuckers who really, really fucked up bad. And we'll be like, yo, I don't want to do that. It's hard to tell whether or not Chris is a really good dude or not. I think he's a psychopath, for sure. I think he is, he's a special type of family. Annihilators are different. They're just different. So, all right. So let me just do this real quick. So this is the end of this episode. And is it this week? Next week? Well, whenever the 20th is, 10 days, I'll be in the Dominican. It's next week. So I'm going to try to pop out a bonus episode before I go so I can prepare for a new episode when I get back. Cause, I'm gonna have shit to do. I'm just being straight up honest with y'all. I'm trying to be on vacation. So I hope you all enjoy yourself, and I hope you all take care of yourself. Chicago's about to warm up soon. It's gonna be lit. My application process is still open for rooftops, boats, and other shit. So I hope you all I don't want to say enjoyed it, but I hope you learned something from this episode. And this is Swear to Drunk I'm Not God. Follow me on all my Instagram shit. Y'all do that. I do weird shit on there all the time. I think I'm pretty entertaining. I don't know. Maybe I'm not. I got a little audio piece here from Bella. Here it is.
My daddy is a hero. He helps me